In this lesson, we're going to take a look at order of operations, and there's an acronym, PEMDAS. Hopefully you've heard it before, or maybe you heard of Please Excuse My Dear Aunt Sally. It's another way of remembering the order of operations. Now, what it means, and what the acronym usually means, is that you do parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, and then subtraction. And usually we think of doing it in that order because that's what PEMDAS looks like it's supposed to be. But I want to introduce you to a triangle way of understanding this, because this order, doing it straight down, is actually not exactly correct. Now the order should actually be, you do parentheses first, then you do exponents, then you do multiplication and division at the same level, and finally addition and subtraction at the same level. Now, why I introduce this triangle is because these bottom two tiers are done left to right. In other words, you don't do addition always before subtraction. It's left to right. It depends which order it comes in. So, for example, if I had 3 divided by 3 times 2, I don't multiply the 3 times the 2 first and get 6. I do the 3 divided by 3, which is 1, and then times that by 2, and the answer should be 2. Whereas if I did the multiplication first, because it looks like you do it first over here, that would give me 3 times 2 is 6, and then 3 divided by 6, I'd end up with 1/2, and that's the wrong answer. So it's got to be left to right, and that's why I introduced this pyramid, so that you can see that multiplication and division are on the same level. In the same way, if I had 3 minus 1 plus 5, I want to go ahead and do left to right subtraction here. Now in this problem, the answer will be the same with addition or subtraction done first, but we still just go ahead and do it left to right. 3 minus 1 is 2, plus 5 is 7. Okay? So now we're going to look at 2 different examples. The first one here, we've got 5 plus 2 times 3. And so using our pyramid, it says we're supposed to do multiplication first. So we do 2 times 3, which is 6. And then we bring down the plus 5, and 5 plus 6 is 11. So your final solution should be 11 for this first problem. In the second problem, we've got 24 divided by 3 times 2 plus 6. Now again, in PEMDAS, it almost seems like you should do multiplication first, but you actually need to do the division first here of the 24 divided by 3, because left to right, the division comes first. So we do the 24 divided by 3, and we get 8, and then we bring down times 2 plus 6. So the next step is to do the 8 times the 2. So the 8 times the 2 is 16. So I have 16 plus the 6. And 16 plus 6 is 22. And that's my final answer. Alright, in this example we have parentheses, and parentheses are the first thing that we need to look at. So I look in here first, and I realize that says 3 minus 4, so I actually do the subtraction there. And 3 minus 4 is going to give me negative 1. And now I bring down the 2 that's next to it, and so I'm supposed to do I've got 10 divided by 5, oops, and then plus the 2 times negative 1. Now it doesn't actually matter whether you do the 10 divided by 5 first or the 2 times negative 1, as long as you don't do the addition next. So, but left to right, we'll stay with the right form here, and we've got 10 divided by 5, which is 2, and then plus 2 times the negative 1. Now, often the mistake happens where I have students that take my 2 plus my 2 and they make 4 first because they're just reading left to right. But again, the multiplication has to come before the addition. So I multiply 2 times negative 1, which should give me negative 2. And then there's the plus sign and the 2. So this is 2 plus negative 2, which should result in 0. Okay. Now I'm going to do the exact same problem, but I'm going to change these parentheses into absolute value signs. Now the reason I do this is because I want you to understand that absolute values are actually another form of parentheses. In other words, they're not really parentheses, but it means you're supposed to do them first. So this time I'm supposed to do 3 minus the 4 first, and then that gives me negative 1, just like it did before. But now I'm supposed to do the absolute value of that next. So the absolute value of negative 1 is positive 1. So the positive 1 is what I'm supposed to multiply by the 2. Okay, so whenever you have absolute value, you do what's inside first, and then you take the absolute value in the next step and get whatever that answer is, and then move on to whether you're multiplying or whatever the next phase is. So now we're looking at 10 divided by 5 plus 2 times positive 1. So that's going to change our overall answer. 10 divided by 5 is 2, and then plus 2 times 1, which is 2. And that's going to give us 4 this time rather than 0. So absolute values, again, are just another form of parentheses. So now we're going to take a look at an example that has exponents. So we have parentheses, so we'll start there. My parentheses, notice there's a negative sign out in front. We don't worry about that right away until after we do the addition. 2 plus 8 gives me 10. And then I bring my minus sign down, and then the 7. And then looking back here, I've got 3 squared. Now be careful, I have too many students that make this 3 times 2 and get 6. That is not the correct way to do 3 squared. 3 squared means 3 times 3. And 3 times 3 is actually 9. So 9 is what needs to replace this 3 squared. And then they're still being multiplied by the 4. Okay. So now at the next step, let's not lose the plus sign. At the next step, I'm supposed to multiply my 4 times my 9 and get my 36, and then I have plus 7 minus 10. So now I work left to right. 36 plus 7, 43, minus my 10, and that should give me 33. Now we're going to take a look at a more complicated problem as far as the parentheses goes, and then also we've got a fraction over here to deal with. So let's take a look at the parentheses first. Inside the parentheses you actually have a little order of operation you have to follow. I have to start with the division of 6 divided by 3, so I make that my 2, and then I bring down my minus 7. So then I do 2 minus 7 next, which should give me negative 5. Now I'm done with the parentheses, so I can bring down my plus sign. And then I need to take a look over here at my 1/2 times 4. Now I can bring it down, and what we need to recognize is that it needs to be done next. Now to multiply a fraction times a whole number, you really should put the whole number over 1, because you can always divide by 1. And then now it's a fraction times a fraction. To do that, we usually cross cancel. So I want to take a look at common factors of 2 and 4. 2 goes into both numbers, so I turn the 2 into a 1, because 2 goes into 2 once. And 2 goes into 4 twice. And then you're left with 1 over 1 times 2 over 1. And then if you multiply straight across, 2 times 1 gives you 2, and 1 times 1 gives you 1, so it puts it over 1, but you don't need to put it over 1 because any number can be over 1, so it's just 2. And then we go ahead and bring down our plus negative 5 that we had before. So now I just finished the problem by doing 2 plus negative 5, which should result in negative 3. So now we're going to take a look at a much more complicated problem that's got division happening across the middle with a big fraction bar, but then there's parentheses. The parentheses are actually only meaning to do multiplication here, except for this middle one, which is probably where we want to start. And then on the bottom you can see you've got square roots happening, and there's multiplication. So let's start with this top negative 2 to the third. Now first take note that the negative sign is not being raised to the third power, so it's really just 2 to the third, which is 8, with a negative sign in front of it. Okay? And now that is what that parenthesis turns into, times this second 2. So all we do is take our negative 8 and times it by 2, and that should give this whole part right here, should cause it to turn into negative 16. So I'm going to leave that there for now, and then I'm going to take a look at the bottom. On the bottom, I want to take a look at the square root of 9, and that should turn into 3. And then it's being times by 6, so I want to go ahead and multiply the 6 and the 3 to get 18. And then I'm going to take a look at the 9 times the 4, so there's a minus sign there, and 9 times the 4 should give me the 36. So now I've simplified the top a little bit, I've simplified the bottom, so now let's rewrite. This should give me 5 minus 16 on top over 18 minus 36 on the bottom. So now you continue to simplify the top and the bottom separately. The top, 5 minus 16, should reduce to negative 11. And then 18 minus 36 should give me negative 18 on the bottom. So the top is negative 11. The bottom is negative 18. Now, We can't simplify 11 and 18, but they're both negative, so I should go ahead and divide those negatives, and it turns into a positive 11 over 18 as the final answer. So when you see a complicated problem like this, where it's got things to do on the top and things to do on the bottom, deal with each of them separately and then wait and hang the division off till the end, and it'll turn into just a fraction that you can simplify.